Theater is a form of connection and communication, all centered around the art of collaboration. From the community playhouse and educational institution to the many regional theaters, on Broadway and in the corporate entertainment world, including cruise ships and industrial events, collaboration is at the heart of every show, every production. Collaboration is the blending of art and science, of creativity and the production process. It is the dance that happens when artists, technicians, designers, producers, musicians, marketers, and a wide variety of passionate individuals bring their talents together to develop a singular experience. Projects with Jason is one such collaboration seeking to inspire, educate, connect, and entertain through a series of unique, multifaceted experiences which seek to explore the wonderful spirit that is generated when professionals of all backgrounds and experiences intersect with rising theater students and educators, bringing together working professionals and talented students in a crucible of collaboration that happens when you put people together in a room and charge them to create something. The results are very special. This series of works is designed to enrich and inspire students, educators, artists, and all others as we look to connect, be entertained, and grow as artists and human beings.
I'm Jason Daunter. Join me in our Projects with Jason team as we explore the world of innovation, design, and all things behind the scenes of live entertainment. Designed to showcase key professionals and enable interactive dialogue between theater students and these artists. Hosted by Principal Lighting Designer for the Disneyland Resort, Casey Wilkerson. Casey is joined by the award-winning projection designer behind A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, Anastasia, and Frozen Live at the Hyperion, Aaron Rhyne. Join us behind the tech table.
Hey everyone, I'm Casey Wilkerson, your host, and welcome to Tech Table, where we bring students and educators together with notable backstage artists from across the entertainment industry. I'm really excited about this episode because we're going to explore one of the oldest theatrical mediums, projection. Oldest? Well, sure. The first projection designer came into being when someone in a cave figured out that their shadow could be cast by fire onto the wall behind them. It was quite a few years until we got to the 1700s when the magic lantern was invented, based on technology from 200 years prior. But then the way we told visual stories began to change. And up through the start of this century, most projection was comprised of still images from multiple slide projectors. The projectors kept getting brighter, video technology kept growing in its capabilities, but both the lighting and projection worlds really changed in the early 2000s when a company called High-End Systems released the first media server and configured it in such a way that allowed it to be controlled by a lighting console. Since then, projection, which can include both projection and projectors and surfaces, as well as display systems like LED walls, it's really grown exponentially, and at the same time has become both more and less expensive, but ultimately more achievable for schools to incorporate into their productions. Still, behind all of that technology lives the desire to tell stories. And that reminds me of this great moment in Cirque du Soleil's Ka, where the focus of the show narrows down to two performers sitting at the edge of what appears to be an abyss in front of a single glowing lantern. And they begin to use their hands to create shapes which are projected by the lantern onto the wall as shadows upstage of them. It's a simple, charming, beautiful moment that's so small amidst this grand, larger than life, amazing, spectacular of a show. But it's a brilliant reminder that we sometimes don't need the most elaborate technology to tell our stories. So in this episode, we're going to meet two educators who have questions about projection and video, along with questions from you, our viewers. So just post those in the chat window along with your first name and where you're from. We'll get to those later on in the show. We'll also be meeting three students who are going to engage in a design challenge with our guest, projection designer Rhyne. Hey.
Hey, Casey.
How are you?
Good. This is exciting.
Very, very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to meet our educators and our students. I'm sure they're going to have some, I know they have some great questions for you. I'm looking forward to that conversation. So first of all, okay, so I have to start by saying congratulations. Earlier this week, you guys won the Outer Critics Circle Award for Outstanding Projection Design for Sound Inside, yeah?
Yes, yeah, I did.
That's very cool.
Very cool. A wonderful surprise to wake up to. I was not expecting that, but that is a beautiful, beautiful play that I loved working on, and I'm so happy that it got some recognition.
Yeah, I did not get a chance to see it, but I've probably a handful of friends who have, and they've all talked about just how beautiful and delicate and wonderful it is.
Yeah, it was a unique opportunity. So much of the show is about darkness and subtlety, and as a projection designer, you don't often get those chances. Often it's about big, bold visuals, which I also love, but to dive into something that's subtle and simple and stark, where you didn't always know if it was video or light or a shadow, like what you talked about in your introduction, was thrilling to do. So I loved that opportunity.
Well, very cool. And so we go from a play that's very subtle to something as big as Anastasia. That's quite a range.
Yes, complete opposite.
All right. Well, so I think we have, for those of you who are not familiar with your work and haven't had the opportunity to see it live, we have some visuals. Yes, we have a reel from you.
Yeah. You'll see the reel of some of my work. Most of it's musicals. There's a couple plays in there, but this is what I have on my website just to show a little bit about my design work.
All right. Well, then let's take a look at some of your shows.
All right.
Today we are in a tech rehearsal where we put every element of the show together. In Frozen we have a lot of video and projection elements to play with. We've got this giant LED wall back here, which I'm kind of in love with. We have video projections that can go on the portals that are surrounded on the set. And we're trying to really blend the video with the set pieces so it feels like a very cohesive world.
So I'm sure most of the educators watching this are going, how can I do that in my high school? We'll get into that a little bit later.
We'll get there.
That's beautiful work. Just incredibly
Thank you.
beautiful. So I guess I want to start with what did you want to do in high school? Like when you were going through high school, did that include theater? And was this part of your grand plan?
I mean, yeah, I fell in love with theater in high school. I didn't know what projections were or what design was for that matter, but I was an actor in plays and musicals in high school. I loved theater as a whole. I couldn't get enough of it. I dove into it, and I really became focused on getting to New York, going to school in New York, and studying theater. And I initially went for acting because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
But quickly learned that I was not an actor. that was not my calling. So I actually studied directing in undergrad at Fordham.
Oh, okay. Got it. And so how did you make the transition from wanting to be a director to projection design?
Yeah, I mean, I fell into this very backwards. Fordham had a really incredible undergrad program where in the directing program, you do a little bit of everything. You have to design your own shows. You have to design other people's shows. You have to take design classes. So I had a pretty good basis of design, but it was all sort of focused through the lens of storytelling of my directing work. And then I got out of school and, was doing what most early career directors do, sort of doing some new things in festivals and trying to direct some of my own work. And then started experimenting with video in some plays I was doing right out of school. I did what a lot of people do out of undergrad, and a lot of the people I graduated with, we started making theater together. And we got like an artist grant at Here Art Center in New York. It's still there, and they gave us some space. And I directed a play. It had a lot of video in it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought this is a cool element. So I just figured it out. There was this live typing sequence that was projected up on the back wall. Tech was a nightmare because no one knew how to do it. But I was sort of fascinated by how much visual power was in that image on stage. I mean, it's just the eye goes to it. And so I kind of explored more, and I assistant directed this piece with a downtown performing arts company called Big Art Group. I was the assistant director. I was kind of an intern for a while, and we did this wild play, not really a play, but it was set on a green screen. It had live cameras, and we mixed the show live and then projected it on these screens in front of the audience. So it was like creating a film live.
Interesting.
So I would sit there and mix the show, and I was kind of the video person by default, as you sort of end up doing when you're an assistant in theater. You kind of get thrown into every department.
Sure.
And the show got picked up by a bunch of European presenters, and they asked if I wanted to go to Europe. And like anyone just out of college, I said, of course, I want to go to Europe. Not that I really knew anything about video at the start of that, but I wanted the opportunity. So I really learned on tour. We were in a different city every week. I sort of had to figure out where projectors would go, how to put the gear together, how to take it apart. It wasn't seamless. I remember very clearly early on plugging an American piece of expensive equipment into German power. Never did that again.
that is a lesson you only need to learn once.
Only once, with all the German crew staring at you like you're an idiot.
Right.
And then just went from there. Almost a year passed, and I had done tons of load-ins of this show. And I got back to New York, and I said, I have this really weird skill set, and I know all this about video. And it was just at a time when producers and directors were kind of starting to experiment. And a friend I had gone to school with recommended me for a play at the Cherry Lane Theater off Broadway. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll try to do that. And I got the job, which just at the time, there just wasn't really many people doing this. No one was thinking about projections. And it was this play, The Dutchman, and it was set in the subway, and I shot in New York City subways, all the backgrounds going by. I rode trains, and I became a projection designer. I loved it. I just was enamored with it, and very quickly, directing was no longer my focus. And I wanted to really dive in on what could happen, what I could create. It was early, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I just went full force. I set the directing to the side. I'm happy I did. And this became my life, and I'm thrilled.
So I love what you mentioned about touring, because it's something that I often tell high school or college students that I'm talking to, that if you have the opportunity to tour, whether it's nationally or internationally, to do it, you learn a lot about yourself, first of all, as to how open you are to change, because tour is all about minute by minute change. And it's not only in how you travel and how you get to the airport, not like all the sort of basics of that.
It's a good test for the life of a designer also. Right?
Yeah, well, and going overseas too. We had an opportunity early in my career to do an international tour, and we went to it was 12 countries in 6 months. And so you didn't have the opportunity to learn the language, every week or so. It just became like the generic, what you learned: push, pull, up, down, in, out, stop, go, left, right, in pretty much all those languages.
That and how to order a coffee in every language.
Yeah, well, the important. So, okay. So you came at this really more from the content side, creating. You mentioned shooting out the subways and everything. You more from the creative art side as opposed to the technology, or were you learning all of that as well on the fly?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I did everything. So I was learning all that on the fly and figuring out how technology worked. But I often said yes to things far before I knew how to do them, and would just figure it out, But my background was in directing, so I was story focused, and that's how I approached everything. And I think, in addition to sort of right place, right time, early phase of this, I excelled in design, but it was also because I could talk to a director, I could talk to other designers. I didn't, I knew how to do that. I didn't approach it just from the technical side, but I could dive into a story and have a conversation about what something should look like early on. And I think, I think that is the best training for a designer, is focusing on the story at all points. There's a lot of skills you need to learn and a lot of technical things as well. But I do think that's the important thing to start with, this story. And that's certainly how I approached everything.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned taking advantage of those opportunities and saying yes, and that's a tremendous. There's risk that's associated with that.
Oh, right?
Because I think a lot of us who have done this for a while, remember that there are times when we said yes, just going, I hope I can figure this out. And there are a lot of times that students don't necessarily want to hear that you don't have all the answers, but the reality is you don't. Sometimes, and there are opportunities that come up that it's really important to just jump in. And say, sure.
I mean, I think you have to be realistic about expectations. Like if you're just starting out and you're experimenting, and your director, you're promising something's going to look like a Hollywood feature, you're setting yourself up for failure. But if you you give an example, maybe it can look like this. Here's, you dive and look at some images, you do some research, you can present sort of a general idea where you can go. And even though you might not know exactly how you're going to do it, how you're going to make this video, this piece of content, you can figure it out if you set the expectations ahead of time.
Yeah. I think that the ability to say yes, combined with that drive and that desire to then follow up, obviously is hugely important. So now, if you're in a high school situation, you're an educator. Why use projection at all? What is it about projection? What can projection do for plays and musicals?
I mean, there's so much visual power in projection. I mean, and I know it seems daunting with what is. With the technology and what's affordable and all that. But there's simple ways to do it. And once you get there, I think you can find very simple ways. I mean, just the first time I really started doing this and really showing work, it was as simple as clouds, because everyone was just sort of used to like gobo clouds or sort of simple washes of clouds. And I would just, for Bonnie and Clyde, my first Broadway show, I literally just shot out my window in my New York apartment, a bunch of sunsets, a bunch of skies, and I got it on stage at the Out of Town, and everyone was like, I can't believe the clouds look like that. It's crazy. It's just, it's just a level of detail that you can showcase, and that's simple. Anyone can do that with their phone right now. You just stare at the sky, you can take a video, bring that in, And you've just brought the level of reality in that show a huge step forward than without. I mean, it's certainly not necessary, but it's an incredible opportunity and an advantage for a student to be able to explore that and play with that. And once you master clouds, then you can master, what does the background look like? What is a building? What is a realistic setting, time of day? And, it's endless.
So now, do you think there are any trade-offs in using projection? Does using projection require other disciplines to do anything differently or to compensate for the fact that there's this other new element?
Sure, yeah. And not every show should have projection also.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's an important thing to bring out there. There should be a story-based or a creative reason why. What do projections bring? Because otherwise it can be a trap. Like, you don't want to just see sort of a film played on stage and all the work done for you. That takes away the beauty of designers collaborating, But if there is a reason and you come together, it can be really powerful. And yeah, there's a trade-off. Obviously, projections vastly changed lighting design, and how a lighting designer approaches a piece is completely different when there's projections versus not. Because projections is light, so you have to talk things through and sort of be open to who can do what better and learn to take a step back and take a step forward, but really be collaborative in that process. And the same with the scenic designer. If you're projecting on a set, you're completely altering what that design is. So are you all on the same page? How can I alter that? How can I help? And then how can I have to also recognize when I'm harming something, or it's too much, or setting up too detailed of a visual that is no longer theatrical. And you have to step back and say, we're going down the wrong path, everyone. This is too much. We're gonna, simplify. Maybe this should just be no projections in the scene. So it's a dance. You have to figure out who takes lead. Sometimes you should, sometimes you shouldn't. My personal way is I'm always trying to problem solve and have something ready. Like, if I've had conversations with the director about half of the scenes in the show, I'm going to come in with content for every scene in the show, knowing a lot of it's going to end up cut. But if I can be of help in the moment, then I'm ready to go. And if not, I just wasted some time making some content, but that's fine in the process.
Well, but that's a great bit of advice. That speaks to a level of preparation that you have to have going into it, and respect for the directorial process and the fact that you may get into tech and the director starts looking for new ideas or different ideas. That's great.
And you have to be ready to go with that. That's tech, and that was sort of. I mean, I don't want to veer too much off the topic that you asked, but I think that the process of learning how to apply video in a theater tech schedule was a journey, because you can't start from scratch. If a director has a new idea, you can encourage the idea and maybe start with something simple. But if it took a month to create a piece of content, I can't by tomorrow have a new idea. Sometimes you can if it's simple, but you have to sort of be communicating. So one way I combat that is come in just very prepared. And if there is a new idea, sometimes I can go there, sometimes I can't, but I can also have this piece that's ready to go that I already worked on that might work. It doesn't always work, but that's how I like to be.
Well, and I would imagine that knowing that you have that in your pocket contributes to sort of like lowering. There's a lot of stress in tech, right? So it's like you walk in with that preparation and knowing that you've covered what you think is, where things might go. Yeah, and that just enables you to be more nimble and responsive. I think that's great.
Yeah. And it keeps the tech process calm,
which we all need. All right. So when at the top of this, we talked about we're going to introduce you to 3 students. So we would love to have you meet our first one. First up is Jillian. So Jillian's going to join us. Hey, Jillian. Hi. Hey, where are you joining us from?
I am from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a freshman at Shadow Mountain High School.
A freshman. Welcome. All right. And next up is going to be Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Rush. I'm from Munster High School in Munster, Indiana, and I'm a junior.
Excellent. Welcome, Sarah. And lastly, we have Zachary.
Hi, I'm Zachary Martin. I'm from Claremont, California, and I'm a sophomore at Claremont High School.
Alrighty, so to let our viewers know, these are 3 students. They're obviously from 3 different schools in the United States, and we reached out to them because they had an interest in projection, and they're going to form their own projection design team because Aaron has a challenge for them that they need to complete by the end of this episode. So, Aaron, what is I love the dastardly. So for you guys, this is Aaron, and he is going to tell you what your challenge is.
Hello. So before this, we picked the show Cinderella because we just thought that was simple. Everyone knows that, you know, at least somewhat, the movie, the story. So the challenge is simple. It's go away and discuss and come up with 3 ways that you can utilize video or projections, any video element, as a design element for Cinderella. Can be anything. No wrong ideas.
Cool.
Right,
Thank
very
you.
cool.
All right.
That is also, and you don't have a budget, which is the best part. You can
Right. Green. This will never happen again. So enjoy it.
Exactly. We will never have this moment again. All right. Well, thank you guys for participating. We're gonna send you away, and we'll meet up back with you at the end of the episode. That's awesome. I can't wait to see what they come up with.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So I want to, I do want to talk about content in that process, but I thought we'd really start by getting into some of the nuts and bolts. Most of our viewers are probably most familiar with your work on Anastasia. So if you wouldn't mind, could we talk about the hardware that's needed to pull something like that off? Let's talk about a big thing, and then we can deconstruct that into important parts and pieces that people need to do this sort of work.
Sure. Yeah. Anastasia is a giant video show, as big as they come. We have a giant high-resolution LED wall in the back of the stage. On each side of the stage are turntables, and there are double-sided high-resolution LED walls. It's the same one. So if the turntable, no matter what side the turntable is on, there's video wall behind it. Additionally, we have a projector shooting to cover the entire stage. We have a few different productions of Anastasia around the world, currently on hold, but coming back soon.
Sure.
And some of them we have, and on Broadway, we had projectors on the side walls of the theater so that ghosts could come and dance around the audience. We have a media server that controls all the video content to get to all those LED walls and projectors. It is a disguised media server, so we can put all the video content there and then it sends it out. And then there's a lot of cabling and interfaces and things in between all that, but those are the basic nuts and bolts of what gets the show up and running on stage.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about did the idea to use LED walls, is that something that came from the director, the set designer? You in looking at if you want to use an LED wall versus projection and front or rear projection, what are some of the things that people can think about when trying to determine what they want to use?
So a short bit of backstory. Anastasia is really about right place, right time, technology, design. It all met in a perfect moment. The team that did Anastasia, I also did Gentleman's Guide with. And when we did Gentleman's Guide on Broadway, LED technology was not at a high enough resolution that I was comfortable using. Gentleman's Guide was a period piece, Victorian. It should look traditional. Tactile. It should feel very real. It should not feel digital. You should not be aware of the pixels. And with where technology was, it didn't look the way it should. So we did not use LED wall. We used projectors.
Got it.
The Walter Kerr Theater on Broadway is very small, and we had very little throw room, and it was incredibly difficult to get projectors to work on that rear screen. We did it. It was hard. There are people still upset and possibly not recovering from that tech experience, but we got it. But the positive thing is, in that process, when we set the tour out 2 years later, LED technology had updated, and it was high enough resolution that we were able to switch over to an LED wall for the tour, and it looked phenomenal. So the director and the set designer and I all went through that process together. When Anastasia came our way, There was a few different versions early on, but it was very cinematic in the nature of the script, and there was a lot of locations. So Darko, the director, pretty quickly knew he wanted to use video. And because we'd had that experience with Gentleman's Guide and learned about LED wall, he's a lot more comfortable diving into this than probably would have otherwise. I think the way it works and with how much video and how important the content is, I think LED is really the only way that our version of the show could work. But there's obviously simpler versions that if you wanted to replace that with a rear screen or a projector based on what your venue is, you could certainly do that for sure. But that was the reason that led us to the LED choice for Anastasia.
Got it. Yeah, I love the being aware of the pixels, because I think that's an important consideration. If you're doing something like you're doing Tommy or something, then something that that potentially could look more rock, more technological, is maybe fits within the narrative or the visual conceit that the director has. But yeah, I think that's an important consideration, and I think it also speaks back to the decision is more than just what do we want to use. It's what fits in and what can we move for. There's so many factors, and I realize that we're not going to cover all of this in an hour and a half. But I love the idea of being aware of the pixels, because you're right. It does. There is a bit of your mind that goes, oh, that's technology. Yeah, that's anachronistic to what's going on stage.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And sort of the conceit with Anastasia became about blending the lines between what is physical scenery and what was video. Mm-hmm. We couldn't have done that with, an older version of an LED wall. You would have never believed that something was video versus what was physical. Right. So the whole design would have had to be different. So.
Well, and the other thing, you said there was about 2 years that lapsed between, not being able to use one and being able to use one. And I think that's indicative of so much of entertainment technology right now, but especially video, is that, it's like, if you don't like what's out there, wait 10 minutes because there's going to be something newer and brighter or better, or, it's just changing so quickly. So now you mentioned Disguise as your media server and playback. Was that something that an operator was taking care of, or was that triggered by a show controller? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So during tech and previews, we have a dedicated video programmer that works with me. We program the whole show together, how it should run, all the levels. Once the show is set and done and frozen, it's controlled by lighting. So after that happens, we don't have somebody actually pushing go, but it's all connected through the lighting board, which I prefer because it just makes the cues, seamlessly timed together. Almost any time I've got a video cue, there's also a lighting cue that goes with that. So if they're all linked and there's one person pushing the button, it's a seamless moment. So it works really beautifully.
Yeah, it's when that moment happened of being able to trigger something with a lighting console, it's like the wheels sort of fell off the world as far as the lighting designers were concerned, because it's like, oh wait, we can control everything. That's what we've always wanted to do. So let's go.
The amend that we made with lighting design when we came in and sort of ruined the lighting design industry. Control.
But that's interesting, because there was at the time, because like convergence was the buzzword at the time, right? And there were a number of people that were just like, oh, video, and I think the people that embraced it, it just depends on where you're coming at it from, and it's just another tool. Right. That's the thing, right? It's like it's another tool in the story box. So why not have that at your disposal? Yeah,
for sure. It took some time. I mean, the beginning phase, it was hard. It was hard to ask a lighting designer with tons of experience and years of doing something the same way to say, okay, well, now we're going to do this differently. You need to bring your brightness down. You need to accommodate it. Look better. I mean, it was rough. And I think those first few years, techs were not fun because there was always this kind of, but we all learned together, and I feel like it's a really beautiful collaboration now, and people know the power in it and know how to use it, both projection designers and lighting designers. I love it.
Well, and there are enough great examples out there now of when the two designers are working in sync and they create something that the audience is not quite sure. Is that projection? Is it lighting? Is it both? Is it, that there's a little bit of magic that occurs there. And I think that the technology has advanced to allow one to be indistinguishable from the other.
Yeah.
I think the disciplines have gotten better about understanding what the others need.
Yeah. I have to say it's my favorite thing about what I do in tech is really that dance with a lighting designer. I mean, I love seeing the color, like Anastasia, for example, Don Holder, who's a brilliant designer. He would have some colors come up, and it was just like incredible, like these sunsets for the scene towards the end of the piece. And I would match that, and then like angles of his instruments about how a sun would come in or shadows. It's my favorite thing to do, to just sort of trick that eye. There was a great moment where we had this a video version of the set on the video wall in the back, and I had lit it what Don's cue was, and Don went to another cue, and I hear him on headset like trying to figure out why the light in the back version of the set wasn't following his cue because we had so seamlessly done it. He had forgotten that was not the set he was lighting, it was a video image of it. So I think my favorite thing in tech is that collaboration between a lighting designer and a projection designer.
Yeah. Well, and there have been a lot of practical considerations too. You mentioned using, front projection. There's a different way to light a show that is front projected. There's another way to light for rear projection, and LED walls with, you have all of a sudden there's a lot of backlight that an LD didn't necessarily bargain for. Yeah. But you have to be able to work with that. Because the LED walls have gotten to be, I jokingly call them the loudest voice in the room, because you turn on one at full at white, and it's brighter than the sun.
They are very bright. And in theater, I think pretty universally, when we get a new toy as designers, we use it badly for a while. Yeah. I think it was like, what is this weird spinning shape? Why are we looking at this? LEDs came on, and this big, huge wall. I remember seeing 9 to 5 on Broadway, and I was like, poor dancers trying to, but you ease in. That was a beautiful show, by the way. No. Well, it was new. That's the first time we've done that.
The wall that's in Frozen live at the Hyperion, that is a beautiful piece of technology.
It is incredible.
Right? Yeah. And I
all in, tears running down my face. Incredible. It is so cool.
I think you're right. We do use them poorly. It's like the maxim with moving lights is just because they can doesn't mean they should, right? I mean, they don't need to move in every cue.
But designers are very good at learning, and we adapt. And we start, maybe we don't have to have that at full. Maybe let's all we get pretty good.
Exactly. All right. Well, hey, I want to introduce you to a couple of educators that we have for you to meet. They've got some questions for you. And the first up, we would like to introduce Jody Williams. Jody, come join us.
Hi.
Hey, Jody, this is Aaron. You've got a couple of great questions for Aaron, so I'm going to get out of your hair for a minute, and you guys can talk.
Fabulous.
Awesome.
First of all, it is awesome to virtually meet you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start with the big question for schools. Where do we start on the balance between what do we spend to get the best equipment to start this journey with? That's really the first thing that we're going to ask. And then
I mean, as we touched on a little bit before, like video technology is consistently changing. So you have to sort of be aware of that, and you don't want to sink a bunch of money into something that's going to be obsolete. You have to start, I think, knowing that it will, but you want to put your money into something that is going to give you multiple years of good use before it becomes obsolete. I think it changes. If you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have had a completely different answer. I think with the focus having shifted to LED walls, that is where technology is advancing and moving, and there's new ones all the time and new companies. Most schools, I don't think, are looking to purchase an LED wall. So this is good for you because projectors have kind of calmed down. They're not advanced. There's not a new projector. I mean, there is, but we've sort of settled on some projectors that work Laser projectors came out a few years ago, and they're quieter. So they're much better for theater. You don't have this loud fan behind you that's distracting you. I think the standard projector that we use maybe on a Broadway show is a 20,000 lumen. That's the measure of brightness laser projector. Schools probably can't afford that. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. The answer is different for everybody. But I think the short answer to the question is investing in a projector right now is a good move. And I think you should do the highest end projector that you can afford, knowing that it'll last you a few years longer than maybe what is standard on the market. So if you can afford a laser projector, I would get the brightest laser projector that you have in your budget. And that's what I would do. You know you're going to get good use out of that. It's great for theater. It's great for other events that you might have in your school. People use it to watch movies. You know, you can do multiple uses, and it's a great piece of technology that's not going to become obsolete in a year.
We are in the position with the current everything being shut down, unfortunately. We're going to, assuming everything gets approved and goes smoothly, we're going to swing the last 3 shows of our season. We're going to swing that budget into the purchase.
Oh, great.
Which is fabulous. So it's been suggested to us by that we look at the base purchase of a laser projector and a lens that will do a front of house throw. And then at the beginning of next school year, assuming that we're going to make immediate use of the technology that we will then have, buy a short throw lens so that we could do on stage or rear. And what we will use this thing all over the stage. Whatever we get, it will be off stage in a box shooting one way. It will be, hung from the rear shooting at something else in the next show. We'll swing it around. So where is a good balance for versatility as far as what brands do that well? What is going to give us the best lineup for lenses moving forward, assuming that's probably going to be our next big expense once we buy the base unit.
Yeah.
And what equipment that you know of as far as manufacturers is going to take the kind of abuse that a high school is going to put it through?
Yeah. So the 2 companies that are really putting out great laser projectors are Panasonic and Epson. So either of those is a safe bet, and they're going to make lenses, and they're not going to go out of business anytime soon. So it's a solid investment. Each projector and each model has its own set of lenses that work with it. So it kind of depends on which one you get. But sometimes they make zoom lenses, so they work at different distances. So you may not need to. I think you need to look at your space and decide first where the projector is going to live. If there's a prime front shot and then a prime rear shot, then you need to just sort of draft it out and figure out what your distances are, and that'll tell you what lenses you need. But you might only need one. It depends on what your positions are. But if you do need 2, I think your plan is smart, because then you have 2 positions, 2 lenses. You can do a rear shot. You can do a specified shot from the front or a full stage shot, 2 different lenses. You're good to go for anything. So it's smart advice.
Hi.
Hey. What else you got for Aaron?
Well, I just, again, Anastasia was gorgeous. And I had a whole list of questions, and my phone just closed up on me. So
that's okay.
Of course. As far as software goes, we started on the advice of a friend of mine who works in projections pretty heavily using MadMapper, which is cheap and fairly intuitive once you kind of get into it. What tricks could you suggest to people starting out when we start projecting onto things other than a traditional screen, to tweak, especially if we are limited to one projector, or if we are blending projectors because we have an ancient Christie that we will use in conjunction with whatever our new technology is until it dies completely. What suggestions do you have for syncing those things up, making them work together so it doesn't look like, oh, that's a sad projector over there?
Yeah,
Is that
sure.
in the software? Is that in the mapping software? What can we do there?
So a few different things. MadMapper is great when you have a specific thing or item or set piece or person, whatever that you want to map to, and that is intuitive and easy. My advice for schools is usually to stay simple with this phase of it, because schools usually have access to computers, and that's something that doesn't cost anything. Something simple like Keynote or PowerPoint is not complex. Anybody can figure that out, and it's as simple as what you would make in a PowerPoint presentation. If you have one image that you don't want to, let's say you're projecting front on the full stage that we just talked about with your lens. Let's say there's a set piece that's much smaller and you just want to project on that. If you use something like PowerPoint or Keynote, you're just scaling that image to fit whatever you want on stage, and then you've done that. And it's very simple. You've spent no money on that. A little more advanced is QLab. A lot of schools are used to that as an audio program. It's very cheap for video. If you need to blend projectors, QLab is the way to go, because I can't remember what an educational license is. I feel like it's $3 a day. It's very, very cheap. And you can put both outputs, both your projectors in. It'll help you blend it. It's very simple. A student could figure it out. An educator could figure it out. Very cheap. So those are really simple ways. You don't need to worry about high-end media servers or something extremely expensive, and those will do the job for you.
Great. Those are great places to start.
And usually you have access to those. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great meeting you.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you, Jody.
meeting you.
So I love the comment about QLab and PowerPoint. I think there is this tendency to jump to what's the cool thing everybody uses, or what's the new thing, or what is Broadway using, and there's sort of a mental skip past, oh my gosh, we have a computer sitting here and it's got Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever, and you can load video into that, and then QLab as well. I had never worked with QLab before. And there's a small theater that I've done a couple shows with fairly recently, and that's their preferred control platform. And we got into it, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is actually really great.
Yeah,
it's very cool to use.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, we have another educator for you. Let's bring in Franklin.
Hello,
hey, Franklin.
How are you?
I will leave you guys to your questions and conversation.
All right. Hi.
First, thank you. I really appreciate the time and
thank you.
It takes to get everything going. My first question, right off the bat, collaboration is huge and essential in creating. And I was wondering, is when you start a project, is there, and if so, what is like the foundational agreement that you make with your director and your designer, your like the set designer and the lights and all that?
That is a really great question. It is different for every show. You really have to dive in, and everyone needs to know what the goals are and what everyone's role is on it. There are shows when I have a giant role, then I'm taking lead on a lot of things, and we go in. I love how did you phrase that? Foundational agreement?
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's so we would have an agreement. Anastasia is one of those shows where there's a lot of video. Everyone knew that going in, and we worked around that. There's many other times where I'm more informative, or I'm a smaller role to the set or lighting, or I'm just helping out in a specified moment. I've done some shows where I didn't have any cues until the last 10 minutes of the show. And that was still valuable and amazing. It was a really cool last 10 minutes of the show. But you have those conversations as you begin, and you sort of know where everyone is focused and what their role is. And then when you get into tech, those questions have already been answered. And then when problems come up, you kind of have that setup already ready to go. And then, I can jump in and help something, maybe the lighting designer does. But if you go in kind of everyone knowing what the goals are for the end, it solves the problem.
Cool. Thank you. So the previous guest also talked about software. Specifically, I'm looking for low-cost software for students, and I teach middle school.
Okay.
For students just to like get their hands dirty and experiment. create with?
For creating content?
Sure.
Yeah. I can that. Okay, so like Photoshop, Adobe makes all these, Premiere editing programs. Those are pretty intuitive. They're not hard to learn, especially with, YouTube tutorials. I feel like students can master anything now. So I don't think people should be scared of those programs, even though that's what most people use in the industry. The other thing I would say is that, we all have these amazing devices now that do incredible things. When I teach the first day of class, I give my students an assignment with a visual concept and take their phones out and come back with content. And on your phone, you can take videos, photos, you can edit them, you can do color correction, you can adjust things, you can blend. I mean, I'm finding that students kind of are more familiar with that than anyone because they're so used to this on their phones and what social media has brought on. So I would say, use the tools that you have. Sometimes editing a photo or creating content is so simple and easy to just do on your phone. And then also don't be afraid of the advanced things like Photoshop, what Adobe makes. It's easy to learn, and you're that much farther ahead of the game if you've already taken the time to dive into some of those programs.
Yeah. Okay.
Adobe also offers really affordable educational licenses for the Creative Cloud. So it's a no-brainer, really. I fully recommend that.
Awesome. Hey, I wanted to share with you, last year, we took a bunch of students to New York and we saw Anastasia. And I think it was the night before the show closed.
Oh, wow.
And so the actors were having lots of fun. All the fun they could have, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
My question is, my understanding of animated content for projections or whatnot, the start and stops feel kind of static. What does the technician do if the actors are having fun and the pacing changes? You know what I mean?
Yeah, good question. I think that we try and ensure that they can't have too much fun in the tech process. We give a lot of control to the stage manager. So every cue, there are set points, start points. In a musical like Anastasia, a lot of it is based on music timing and when a song starts. So the actors who have done the show hundreds of times and know when they can have a little more fun than other times probably know some musical points that they can perhaps ham it up a little bit. Right. But if we've done our job, we really set our cues up so as soon as something goes awry, because it's the same thing if there's an accident that happens on stage or somebody screws something up, that the stage manager can take control and immediately press the show and move forward. So hopefully we did our job in that aspect.
Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Franklin.
Good questions.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Okay, so I love that you my takeaway from that last bit was use what you have, right? Yeah. It's like the tool that you have in front of you, your phone, whether it's your phone or a laptop or whatever. Again, going back to using simpler things to project with, whether that's Keynote or PowerPoint, and not overlooking sort of the obvious. I think that's really great advice.
Yeah, and if students if they're using what they have and they're excited about it, and you want to encourage them to go further, then there's a ton out there to dive into with more advanced content creation programs and things. But we have a world right now where the visual image is easy and accessible, and we can use it all the time on our devices. You can Google an image, you can explore what something looked like. It's amazing what technology has brought us right now. So use what's in front of you.
It seems like we're living in the age of the content creator. Like
everyone is a content creator now. So you have a job.
It's not always the greatest content, but everyone's creating content.
At this point.
So I think it's clear that your beginnings as a director really influenced your approach to content from a narrative and storytelling standpoint. I think my next question is, how do you begin to develop a visual language or a visual vocabulary or a style for a particular show? What conversations happen in the beginning to allow you to go away and begin to create your content?
Yeah, I think it's different with every director and it's different with every team, but usually there's something that's inspiring us, or the set designer, has an idea that starts the set, and there's some visuals that we look at or we're inspired by, and then we kind of just dive in from there. I think with Anastasia, we wanted everything to sort of be realistic, in that we wanted the audience to kind of believe the setting where they were, have the background sort of tell us the location, because there's so many things, but we also wanted just to heighten everything. Everything's just a little more beautiful than reality, a little more exaggerated, and that kind of was our guide through it. Some of the shows I do for Disney, which is finding a style in Disney, is always complex, because the Disney canon is so many different styles of visuals, from animated to what computer graphics are. So especially now with all the live action films, when I do a new show, which version of it are we doing? Like, what should it look like? So what I often do is I start with what I just call a style guide, and I will take one visual, maybe it's like the first scene from the show, and I'll make it 4 or 5 different ways. And I'll say, so here's a painterly style, here's a really detailed graphic style, here's a super realistic style that's based in photography, here, whatever it is. But so we all can look at it and say, this feels like our show, this absolutely doesn't feel like our show. And then we have something as like a guide to work from as we start. I think it's really important, because creating content, especially some really detailed content like Disney, I mean, that can be months of work to be like, you know what, I think we need a new style here. I think we should have actually done, we don't have the time or budget to do that. So I really try to lock down on what a style is at the beginning phases.
Got it. And then how do you visually represent your ideas to the rest of the team? Is it through something like storyboards or sketches, or brief clips? I mean, what do you like doing to get your ideas across?
So step 2 from that would be storyboards. And what I like to do, and usually the scenic designer as well, is the set designer will come up with sort of the storyboards of the set, and then I'll kind of hijack his storyboards for a while and do examples of what video would look like in each scene. Usually I don't like moving video yet, because it's too early. We just want to see kind of a still image, talk about style, color, how things should blend. And we do, whatever the show needs, but usually a scene by scene for every scene of the show. And then we have a starting point to jump off from. Some directors and scenic designers really like to get detailed, so that when we're in tech, we're looking at the storyboard and referencing that and saying it should really look like this. Some directors kind of don't want to be that specific and want room to just play around and have new ideas. And both ways are fun and exciting. So I want to, do what I need to do to make sure everybody in the room feels comfortable. But having a storyboard, kind of a roadmap of everything, is really helpful to have.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think no matter what level of technology you're working with, it really is all about the content. I mean, but bad content on a beautiful LED wall is still bad content. Right. So let's talk a little bit about creating custom content. And there are a lot of students who are interested in this, and there are different roles and careers that are available to students. Can you talk a little bit about, like, who is it you're working with as you're providing inspiration and direction for content creation?
Yeah. Projection design has a lot of elements to it, and really there's a lot of pieces that, as you say, are their own career paths.
Yeah.
I have a team of artists that I work with that are incredible animators. I've worked with them for a lot of years. They're really, really talented. And they all have their own sort of skill set about what they do really, really great. I've got an artist who is really excited by 3D work. He loves working in game engines. Like that's a new thing about in the industry of how to really make detailed 3D sets is working in video game engines, and it's stunningly beautiful content. I mean, it looks like what a film might do. The effects are stunning. I've got another artist who loves kind of traditional art, and he works in After Effects primarily, and he's amazing with the details of like in a curtain and the age and the detail and what it's made out of, and I have other artists that are really great Photoshop editors. I make content as well. I am nowhere near the skill level of like what some of my artists are and the 3D content they make. It's incredible. But yeah, those are career paths on their own. They don't want to be designers. They want to make content. They love that process. They love getting in the trenches and creating something visually stunning. They don't want to deal with a conversation with the director or like all that other part of it. So it's a really seamless team, and it's incredible. I love working collaboratively with my team. There's other shows that are smaller. It's not always like that. Anastasia, obviously, there were multiple people. Disney shows. Sometimes I'm doing a play and it's just me, and I make the content myself, and I have a lot of fun doing that. That's obviously how I started. My first shows, I didn't, there wasn't budget for a team of artists. So it just depends on what the needs of the show are. But on Broadway, any Broadway projection designer, for the most part, has people working on content with them. Just like a scenic designer would have people painting the set or constructing the set, or a lighting designer would have people hanging the lights, or costumes, people are building the costume pieces. So it's the same as other design disciplines, but often projections you think of, well, one guy is sort of doing all the work, and that's really how it works.
Well, and I think it's a serious misperception, because it's because, I mean, from the outside untrained eye, somebody shows up at a theater and starts playing content.
Yeah.
So there's a guy there who's playing content. Yeah. So it's this complete misperception of the fact that there are individual artists, there are animators, there are compositors, and like you said, there are people who are specialists, people who like are lighters and shaders, or just do particle stuff, or special effects, or detail stuff, and they all work in different, whether it's a game engine or Maya or Photoshop or Premiere or whatever. It's people have specialties, and it's not a one size fits all sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have, so given that, right, that there's so many different career options potentially that are available, and many of which, like if you want to be an artist or an animator, then it's best to have a significant art background and a background in training in the technology that you're using. But given that there are a lot of students out there that don't have a lot of experience with projection, where do you think they should begin their training? Like if there's a high school teacher, should they look amongst their students who are interested in lighting design, or their graphic artists, or gaming or web design? I mean, depending on which way they want to go.
Yeah, it's a good question. Projection designers come from all those backgrounds. I mean, some people really have a graphic basis, some are lighting designers, some are scenic designers, and they come, in to dabble in this world, and a lot of them stick around. I'm self-taught. When I went to school, there was no studying projection design, or even the word projection design really had begun. So, so I come from a school of diving in and figuring it out. And if I have a visual that I want to show, I would start and research it and find other examples and play with Photoshop, play with programs where you can paint on something, take a photo and paint on that photo, adjust it, do filters on it, just dive into the resources that you have and expand on it. And then there's all kinds of video editing programs, Premiere, which a lot of people are, as we talked about earlier, content is everywhere these days, but it's accessible. You can edit a video, people are making videos for YouTube, for social media. So people are comfortable with that. But if you take a content approach of whatever show you're doing, you have access to do that right now with your resources.
Yeah.
So don't be scared. And it's a great opportunity for students who want to learn and explore.
Yeah, truly. So now, in addition to custom content, there's licensed content. I want to talk a little bit about that, because there's I think just sort of a general confusion as to, you know, you're just starting out. You find a software program that can rip stuff off of YouTube and go, oh, well, I'm just going to take this and then I'm going to project it. And that's a hard no. Yeah. I think there are a lot of houses out there, Shutterstock, Getty Images, for stills. There are other places where you can get video loops and things of that nature. And there are resources that will allow you to use their content across a variety of applications for a fee. And I think the fee is the important part because, we've talked about these careers, these roles, right? Artists, photographers, animators, they all deserve to be paid for the work that they've created. And if we just download their stuff from the internet, we're not only stealing from our fellow artists, from our collaborators, but potentially opening the school and our companies up to potentially legal action. Yeah. Which nobody wants to get into. So luckily, there are a couple of providers out there of licensed content, and I wanted to talk to one of those. So Theater Avenue is out there, and Broadway Media, and I know that you've worked with Broadway Media to Gentleman's Guide. So we want to introduce teachers to one of the legal ways to introduce licensed content, and that is with a service like Broadway Media. And we're going to show you a reel that has, I think, some of your stuff in it, as a matter of fact.
Great.
Awesome. Hey, so let's welcome Quentin Sanford from Broadway Media.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Sure. How's it going?
Doing very well. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Quentin. How are you?
Doing great. So that was a production of Gentleman's Guide at Jesuit High School. That was the pilot production of the amateur version of Gentleman's Guide that had your projections in it.
Fantastic. Looks great.
So now talk me through the process. What happens when obviously, so we want to do Gentleman's Guide, right? And the original Broadway production wants to do that, wants to be able to go out through the licensing companies and have high school or regional or college or whatever be able to perform the show. So what is the process between somebody like you, Aaron, and you, Quentin, that gets us to a finished product that educators can then use?
Sure. So
whichever one of you wants to take.
Yeah. Broadway Media was established to sort of break down the barriers to technology in the performing arts. And so we partnered with the licensors. That was like one of our first steps. We wanted to go right to the source, theatrical rights worldwide, Music Theater International. We're actually the only media licensing house that is officially recognized and endorsed. And an arm of what we do is also represent original Broadway works. So Aaron's work in Gentleman's Guide, Bonnie and Clyde, Anastasia, what we do is we take those original designs and we commercialize them into a product that can be played on any amateur theater stage, which is sort of a complex process. Taking all of this conversation over the past hour and trying to get it to where we can deliver it to someone who's never actually used projections, doesn't have maybe the time or budget or the student team that year to develop their own content. We give them the ability to download a show that fits with the licensed script and increase their production value.
That sounds like a complex sort of scenario to negotiate your way through.
It's been a fun journey, though. I grew up in theater, and I grew up in a very underfunded community theater. I thought I was going to be an actor, but then I eventually just kept moving upstage so far that I ended up backstage. And And I enjoyed every area of design disciplines in theater. And when we established Broadway Media, we really wanted to sort of create a voice for the Broadway designer or professional designer in the secondary arena and make their media more accessible to any high school or middle school or community theater that wants to use original works.
That's really incredible. And it's given that projection is or I guess the modern era of projection feels so new, the fact that you guys have been able to jump in and create this and offer resources is really incredible.
It's been an uphill battle, let me tell you. I think Aaron was talking about how LED technology changed so much from the Broadway production of Gentleman's Guide to the tour. We've been experiencing that constantly because we're not only a media licensor, we also develop software. We have a fabulous free software for Mac PC and iPad called Stage Player. And it is essentially a media server on a computer, and it allows you to cue live video right with the licensed script. So we give that to everyone for free. But the other side of the equation is the hardware side, and projectors are constantly increasing in capacity and possibilities, and the price changes. LED walls are becoming popular. So Broadway Media also sells and rents all of that hardware for theaters.
Sure. That's really incredible. So the process, once you guys have decided that that we're going to use this particular all of these images or this content, how does that get packaged into something that a teacher can then grab a hold of and download? You guys go through this whole process you have to do editing and recolor correcting and everything, since you're not quite sure what surfaces these are going on to? How does all of that work?
Quentin, you can talk on a normal process, but I think with what they've done with my work, especially with Gentleman's Guide and Bonnie and Clyde, and they're amazing people for dealing with it, because I've joked with them often, but those were older shows, and I did a lot more myself back then than Anastasia. So I literally delivered them a mess of content with file names and things that made sense to me. I'm sure your team was screaming with rage, some things together, to be honest. But yeah, I sent Quentin everything, research, textures, different visuals. And he mentioned earlier the pilot production, but they find a school that wants to do it first and basically tech it and put it all together. And he can speak better to this, but versions of it that are easily accessible to any school and any budget or technical needs.
Got it.
Yeah, that really centers around our mission. We want to make it possible for any size theater. So taking something from an original Broadway work and getting it into an amateur stage is a really kind of complex timeline. We will work with Aaron and take his materials, and then internally we'll kind of look at what was created and then tear it all apart and try and recreate it so that no matter where it's being used, it looks exactly the same. Because there's also a protection of what Aaron created. If he created something as beautiful as Anastasia and someone purchases the licensed rights to use that artwork, we need to make sure that it's going to look exactly like that. And so from changing it from the LED wall and the projector and that media server setup and everything into something where they can turn on their MacBook with a classroom projector and get a similar experience, that's really quite a timeline. And we use very similar techniques, storyboarding and understanding exactly how it's going to flow. Another thing we don't really think about, the script from Broadway often changes by the time it gets to the licensed market. And so adapting and finding moments where, oh wait, we didn't have content for that scene. So I think it was in Gentleman's Guide or Bonnie and Clyde, I forget which one, we actually had to create new content under Aaron's brand guidelines to meet that style for the show and deliver it in the licensed format.
Got it. Wow, that's some work.
It's honestly really fun. I've been traveling around the country for 8 or 9 years, teaching at different thespian events, Educational Theater Association. And so I meet with a lot of teachers and students, people who are very interested in content creation, and also those who just really want to start using projections and might not be ready to start creating their own content or want to use original media. And it's been a really amazing opportunity to have those conversations and watch how the industry has changed. But people are so excited about what this technology does for their theater. It allows people to become visual storytellers in a new way. And it's very special to play a part in that, and kind of also play a part in the ecosystem of theater and making sure that, you know, all of our sales, our revenue from projection design that we're licensing, not only goes to the artists that created it, but it also goes to the licensing house and the authors and composers who creative genius this all spawned from.
Yeah.
So that's really part of our model, is we want to make sure that we're compensating and creating long-term royalty generation for everyone involved in theater.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Quentin. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. For more information, BroadwayMedia.com. Go check out Aaron's work.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Quentin. All right. Hey, so we have a couple of viewer questions for you.
All right.
So let's start with Peter Mendel. We've touched on this a little bit, but his question is, personally, what software do you use for content creation and editing?
After Effects. After Effects from Adobe is my go-to. It's what I create everything in. I'm comfortable with it. It's motion graphics software for those of you not familiar. It's like Photoshop, but for motion graphics. It's amazing. And there is a learning curve, but it's not something that I would say students can't dive into and start to figure out. But everything that I make is either Photoshop or After Effects.
Well, and Adobe's really good at, first of all, at providing educational pricing, but then also there's just a ton of tutorials online. Adobe provides a suite of tutorials, but then, you know, YouTube is littered with like, this is how I do this in After Effects and Photoshop. You have the school of YouTube.
And in this world, anytime you come across something you can't figure out in After Effects, it's just as simple as putting it into YouTube, and there are thousands of other people that have come up with the same problem, and there's a solution to it, and it's quick and easy. So it's an incredible program.
Yeah. All right. So James Breidenbaugh asks, when a show is on tour, so when you convert from Broadway to go on tour, do you find that you have to limit or change your projection design given how different touring houses are all over the U.S.?
Somewhat, although not as much anymore. When we sent Gentleman's Guide out on the road, we actually cut the projector. We had a front projector that filled the whole stage that we did effects on the set, and we actually cut that, partially because of cost, but the venue sizes was just so different. It just wasn't really worth it. With Anastasia, we actually really needed that front projector, and there was hesitation, but with the media server, it's very simple actually. To track actually the location of the set. So when they set up in a load-in, the projector fits at the front of the balcony rail, and there are sensors within the set and the media server that it just recognizes where the show is. They slide it around to fit a few guide points, and it's good to go. So it really works in any theater. There's a couple situations where a theater might have a really, really steep angle where we might have to fade off a little bit of the top, but it's negligible at this point. So the technology really lets touring. It usually looks even better than Broadway nowadays, to be honest. So.
I've seen that in a couple of different shows.
Yeah, not always, but it's
true. Yeah. So now, when you're going, I have a question about about touring. When that's a separate tech process, right? The whole band gets back together, right? And you tech through what can be an altered version of the show because like Quentin was saying, you know, some scenes change or dialogue changes. So what is typically the length of that process to tech for a tour for something bigger like Anastasia or Gentleman's Guide?
Sure. I mean, it's almost always like starting over. The game with touring is it's all about truck size. Yep. It's all you talk about when you prep a tour is what can fit into how many trucks, and everything goes down to that. With Anastasia, we had to slim down the set because it had to fit in a certain amount of trucks. to fit the budget. So some of the angles went away, the side panels got a little smaller. But video-wise, it's still pretty similar. But yeah, we had to sort of slim that down and have those conversations early on. And we did cut a song, so there were some changes. But you really do start at the beginning in tech, like it's a whole new show. You work through every moment, even if the video equipment is the same. Usually, the lighting equipment's a little different. And with Anastasia, I'm consistently trying to match the colors of the lighting. So that is starting over, really, because everything's just slightly different. And if you really want it to look the same, you have to go beat by beat, just like we did on Broadway.
Got it. Got it. All right. And last viewer question, Cameron Pirrett. Hey, Cameron. What is the ratio of still versus animated video that you typically apply to in one of your designs? Or is there a formula that you like?
There's not really a formula. It depends on the show and the story that we're telling and what it should be. I could not even tell you what the ratio is on Anastasia. I don't know. There's a lot of obviously moving imagery. A show like Bonnie and Clyde, there's a lot more still imagery. That was about kind of historical documentation and rooting the characters and the reality of who the real people were. So a lot of that was like mugshots and police reports. So that's primarily still content. So it just depends on the show and what the needs are.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, so hey, I think it's time we should check back in on our student design team.
Yeah, let's see what they've come up with.
All righty, so let's bring our students back in. Jillian, Sarah, and Zachary. Hey guys.
Hello.
All right, so you've solved everything in the world about projection, and what have we got? Who wants to go first?
Okay, so can I go first?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, so my idea when it came to projections and Cinderella was magic. And basically what I wanted to prove was that when you use projections, you don't need to use huge ones. You don't need a full background every time. And so I was thinking of like when the fairy godmother waves her wand, or like anytime magic is used, you could use like small projections to add almost a highlight to the stage. Because when you have a background, it's beautiful, but your eyes kind of get used to it after a amount of time. But when you have just a little sparkle on the wand, it's beautiful, and it like almost hypnotizes the audience. And that's the thing, is like when you add texture, it adds depth. And when you add depth, the audience almost forgets they're in an audience. So by those highlights and by the small projections, you can add anything you want. Like you can add like the magic on her wand, or just like when, yeah, this is just like the projections. And that's kind of my idea. And yeah, just the small things matter is basically the overall thing.
Yeah, that's great.
That one, Aaron?
Yeah, so you're thinking as like a special effects designer, which is a great thing that projections can do. And I love your idea that you want to highlight the magic as an effect. And so if you have no background, you don't have projected imagery behind you or any other projections, you've just trained your audience to not expect projections, right? So when a magical element happens and she waves her wand and you see some magical particles come out of her wand, the audience is going to gasp with surprise because they haven't been seeing a video background. They didn't know that was happening. So I love that idea because you've taken your audience on a journey of surprise as a designer. So well done. Great job.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. Okay, so Sarah, would you like to go next?
Yes, sir. So the first thing we all kind of thought of when we went to go discuss what we were going to do is how to do the transformation scene. And what we came up with was to basically start with a see-through screen, and the display screen that we kind of came up with was like something called like an LCD screen, where like it'll be see-through to the audience as glass, but you can still like see projections on it.
Okay.
And then we wanted to have a real 3D pumpkin that could kind of like move on the floor, so have wheels on it, and that would be behind the screen. So to the audience, it looks like a real 3D pumpkin that's sitting there at the beginning of the scene. But as the fairy godmother starts doing her magic, the magic fairy dust would start showing up on that screen. And then eventually, as the transformation happens, we take out the lights on the stage. So it's just the fairy dust, and the fairy dust becomes so thick that you can't see behind it. So a switch between this physical pumpkin to a physical carriage, because the problem that we had was that we wanted Cinderella to be able to eventually get into this carriage, so we didn't want it to only be projection. So then after the dust clears, this real carriage is there, and the screen can be lifted into the fly system for her to get on.
Very cool. You went with the no budget thing to the limit, and I'm proud of you for that. That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's a great, exciting idea. It would be a big, really cool effect piece. I mean, a similar response, right? You're also using video as a special effect to make this prop or set piece magically transform into a bigger, more impressive, larger set piece that then she could ride to the ball. So yeah, amazing, great work. It's kind of, I think what you're talking about is like a scrim material, but maybe it's made of what a screen might be. So you can alter it as a transition. But amazing, yeah, I want to see that.
I have to tell you, Aaron, when she was talking about that, I thought about the first time we see Olaf in Frozen Live.
Yeah.
And that is out of a show that has a lot of beautiful effects in it. That's one that gets an incredible reaction every time because pure magic happens out of nowhere. No one's expecting it. And it's a similar principle. Yeah. All right, Zachary, what you got for us?
All right. Well, we were thinking about how one of the major story elements of this show is the idea that when it gets to midnight, everything's going to stop. She's going to transform back into her old self. And so we were thinking one way we could make that more dramatic is to have a clock. And it could, as the time gets closer to midnight, it could become more intense, more dramatic, maybe get less transparent, more opaque, or get brighter, right? And you could sync this up with the music and the striking of the clock in QLab or something, and it could just add a very nice dramatic effect.
Great. Yeah, so your version is a more advanced content creation piece, right? Where you would create in video content this clock. It would be a big design element, and that would be our focus. And then in video content, you'd create what it would do, how it would shift. But yeah, great. Excellent. All three different ideas, but great work.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you guys very, very, very much. Appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to come in and play in the sandbox a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys later. Thank you all.
Bye.
All right, so I have one more viewer question that came in.
Okay.
And it actually fits with a question that I wanted to circle back to. Sam Regan asks, when designing a show, how do you handle so many different files in the show? Is it all one file? Do you do multiple files? How does that work within the media server? And my question was maybe a bit more general about file management. Sounds like a nightmare on a big show. And what do you have to do in the beginning to make sure that you don't mess yourself up later on in the process?
What's great about this is I'm sure that my two assistants are watching this laughing hysterically and wishing they were here to tell the world how disorganized I am with file structure and file management. So
we'll hear from them in the comments.
I am not good at that, but I have incredibly organized assistants who have forced me to be more organized. But the truth of that is yeah, I mean, there are such complex, it's all about organization. And when you make a new video file, there are often 30, 40, sometimes over 100 versions of that file. If in one scene, if I just want to adjust the color of the sky, it might take 100 times to get that right. But you also never know if you're done. So we keep all the versions. So, you know, we do things like every piece of content has a code in it. So it's usually by the act and the scene number, there's a description, and then there's a version number. So if you're making content for Act 2, Scene 3, we would call it 0203. Let's say we're making a sunset. So 0203 sunset sky version, whatever. So that's in our file structure. So in that now, I know generally what it is. we try to really stick to that. And everyone working on the team, we have a system that we've laid out ahead of time. I usually make a document, I tape it on the tech table. Here's sort of the system that we're using. And we all just stick to that for the show. And sometimes we might change it a little from show to show, but generally there's a code that we can always determine what the piece of content is and where it should go in the show.
Yeah. So just one or two more questions for you. During we've gotten through the content creation process. Let's assume everything is rendered and it's all gorgeous and it's ready to go, right? And the crew comes in and they begin installing all the projectors. What is your role during installation? And how does that lead into your time in tech? And what are you typically doing during, let's say, a normal programming session?
So before installation is the most important period because we have to lay everything out. Everything has to be drawn. We have to look at drafting. I have to tell the crew where to position the projectors, where to hang it. When you go into a Broadway tech, the designer's not allowed to touch anything. I can touch my personal laptop and that's all because of union rules. So I have to be really specific going in where everything needs to go. So installation is basically me sitting there making sure that what I asked to happen happens. Or sometimes you come to the realization that what you thought isn't actually correct. The position maybe that on paper looked precise, but actually because of the set piece that's come in a little bit, it needs to move by a couple inches. So that period is really just fine tuning what you've drawn out on the plans. And then you go into a phase of pre-programming where it's before tech is there because I don't want to waste everyone's time in the room. I want to pre-program the show. I want to put all the content in with my programmer. So, often other departments are working. Lighting is probably doing the same thing. Maybe sound is as well. But we have all our content. We're working through the show with the media server, and I'll give the programmer, okay, here's the content for scene 1. We'll lay it in. I'll look at it on stage. I'll give some notes. Let's adjust the levels of this. Let's adjust the color of this. Sometimes I see it and I'm like, I have a lot of notes about content. Maybe I need to remake something. Maybe my animator needs to remake something. But it's my first time I'm seeing something on stage.
Right.
So I really want to take advantage of that to respond in the moment. How does it look? How does it look on the set? How does it look on the screen? So that when I'm there for tech and everyone's in the room, the director, the writers, the actors, I'm not taking away that time for my nitpicky work. I've already had that moment on stage and I'm just proceeding with how the show works for tech. So that's the early phase for me.
Yeah. Now, do you find that that what you see in your head versus what you see on a computer monitor rendered versus what you see out in the space, in the venue, is that's your time to go, oh, that didn't look like I thought it was going to look, and to either go back to the drawing board or come up with a different idea? Or, I mean, how often does something like that occur that things are radically different, apart from things like normal, color correction and minor compositing stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it happens quite often. I think over the years, I've just learned to accept that as part of my job. I know going in that the first version of something isn't going to be what I want. And that's okay. It's a draft. Even though we may call this final content before tech, it's really a draft once we see it. And I embrace that. I've learned to love tech and being in the room and respond in the moment. That's my favorite thing about being a designer, and I think the most important role of a designer. So, it's not a bad thing. I get it up there. I might love it. I might hate it. I joke sometimes that the thing I'm most excited about, I'm most sure about, is probably the first thing that's going to get cut. And something that I just haphazardly made at 3 a.m. on After Effects goes on stage and everyone's like, wow, this is
right.
Amazing. So you don't always know. But over the years, I've gotten better at knowing how a piece of content is going to play on a specified surface based on the color, the light of it, and how it plays, where the lighting direction is coming, and how that blends with the set, blends with the imagery. So yeah, I'm better at knowing what it should look like than I first started, for sure.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that young designers may not give a lot of consideration to is that, projecting onto a flat surface that is a medium gray that's friendly to projection is very different than projecting onto multiple planes, all of which have different colors and textures. And all of those inherent colors and textures that the scenic designer has chosen are going to take your light differently. If you're projecting green on a red wall, then there's an issue.
Not green. Yeah, I go back to the earlier conversations about really having those collaborative discussions ahead of time, talking to the designers, knowing what the intention is, so that I can look at the set renderings and say, well, what is that screen made of, or what is the paint treatment that you're going to have on that set piece? Because if you want to achieve this projection-wise, we might need to adjust what that paint color is. We might need to lighten it a little. We might need, a lighter value of color is always going to be more friendly to projections than a darker value. So, but if you have those conversations early on, then there's no surprises in tech.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, I really want to thank you. This has been so awesome. Thank you for taking the time and to walk us really through not only content, but the technology side, and to offer our teachers and students some really, really, really great advice.
Thank you so much. It's been so great to do this. Thanks to you and Jason and everyone for doing this. It's so great in this strange moment in time to be talking about art and theater. And I'm so appreciative of it. It's fantastic. I'm reminded how excited I am to get back into a room and tech a show.
Oh, right. Well, thank you so much, and I hope to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. So before we go, I wanted to share this resource with you. So I hope I don't get glare on this. This is Media Design and Technology for Live Entertainment by Davin Gaddy. So Davin has been working in this field for about 25 years, and he teaches projection workshops to high school and college students. This book is a super helpful guide to understanding more deeply some of the concepts and equipment that we've discussed in this episode. And the appendices contain multiple system layouts and formulas as examples, along with an extensive glossary, because a lot of the terminology used in video can be a little mind-boggling. So, as always, if you like what you're seeing, hit subscribe here on YouTube. Follow us on social media. Thanks again to Aaron Rhyne, along with Jillian, Zachary, Sarah, Jody, and Franklin. We really appreciate the time that you all took to join us here at the Tech Table. Thank you.
Hey, it's Jason. If you like what you saw, take a second and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell and follow us on all social media. Thanks for watching.